Without a doubt, the comic book fandom has probably some of the best and finest hypothetical questions in all of nerddom. Which heroes from which companies would win if they had a fight? What old teen book would you love to resurrect? What creative team do you think would really make a character sing like never before? And perhaps my absolute favorite, the one that I have chose to make the topic of this week's video, and that is, hey, which Gotham gang would you join if given the opportunity? Now, I know plenty of people over the years have already given their 2 cents on the topic, but I don't think anyone has bothered to get as weird or obsessive with it as I plan to in this video. So without further hot-dogging, without further grandstanding, let's get into it, shall we? Now, starting things off strong, our first option is Two-Face's gang, a group that often seems as torn and inconsistent as their leader himself, mainly because depending on if we're looking at the comics, the video games, the animated shows, their general flavor always seems to be wildly different for whatever reason. Now, the first question we gotta answer going in right away is, are you personally a good fit for Two-Face's organization, given what we already know about the kind of people who he hires? Case in point, in his classic 2-part debut in Batman the Animated Series, Two-Face was flanked by identical twin redheads, because really, what better way to show off your obsession with duality and the number 2 by hiring identical twins? Now, not everybody is a twin, let alone an identical twin, so this is probably going to be a hard hurdle for most people to clear. Now, in that very same episode, we also learned that before joining the gang, the 2 twins were actually prosecuted by Harvey Dent, meaning that there's probably a very good chance that Two-Face draws upon his previous knowledge as a lawyer to make sure that he has the pick of the litter for Gotham's underworld, picking a henchman for his gang who are not only good at their jobs, but probably loyal enough as to not squeal on their boss. From this we can glean, if you're not already a pre-established criminal with a jacket to your name, then there's a good chance that you're probably not going to make it to the second round of auditions for the gang. Furthermore, you'll probably notice that outside the very sporadic appearances of Sugar and Spice from the movie Batman Forever, at least one video game tie-in comic, and a fun cameo in Harley Quinn the Animated Series, Two-Face's gang basically has no women in it, which means that if you are a woman, don't expect to join and don't expect any upward momentum. Another unique thing about Harvey's gang you may notice is that they actually enjoy a rather special relationship with the GCPD. To bring it back to the excellent Batman the Animated Series again, in the 2-part episode Shadow of the Bat, Harvey enacted a plan to try and frame Commissioner Gordon for bribery so that he could insert his own puppet commissioner in the form of Gil Mason. These corrupt GCPD officers no doubt indulging in their own kind of two-faced activities. From here we can extrapolate that the darker side of the Gotham police force actually prefers to work with Two-Face when given the opportunity, no doubt given Harvey's own past as a member of the Gotham legal system. Which is, of course, very ironic because in just as many versions of the Two-Face story, Harvey in his role as a lawyer attempted to go after dirty cops like he does in The Dark Knight. Now, what about the uniforms, you might be asking yourself? Every gang worth its salt has their own signature look, their own gang colors. Two-Face and his group, well, they've kind of been all over the place over the years. They've worn everything from your classic Dick Tracy-inspired mobster suits to adopting more two-tone color schemes in black and white, no doubt in deference to their boss. Good examples of this are, of course, the Two-Ton Gang, again from Batman the Animated Series, and perhaps most famously of all, Two-Face's gang from the Arkham City game. There, they even went a step further by donning Halloween masks burned on one side, which, if you ask me, could be viewed almost as insulting as it is respectful to Two-Face himself. Hey, this is what you look like, boss. You know, you with your burnt face, this is you. We did this because of you. You like it? Harley Quinn the Animated Series put their own spin on this for Two-Face's gang as well. Members donned suits much like their boss that is split down the middle, featuring black and white, though here they go a step further by also wearing fedoras that are also split black and white. But perhaps the strangest version of Two-Face's gang is the spiked-collared biker version of the group with the half-black, half-red ski masks from Batman Forever. Weird that this version never showed up again. I thought, they could, bother to actually build upon this. There's something there. It's not quite there, but there's something there. Now, as with joining any successful organization, you have to ask yourself the question, what does management look like? How is Two-Face as a boss? Well, he's been shown to be intelligent, ambitious, and effective, reigning as the #1 gang lord in Gotham multiple times over. His gang dips their beaks into whatever criminal enterprises they can, from drugs to guns, though across pretty much all mediums, something that stays consistent is the fact that Two-Face, well, he loves to steal. Be it robbing banks in the Arkham Knight game, trying to hit the Gotham Mint in the Batman the Animated Series episode Almost Gotham, even trying to rob the police of their own station in the Harley Quinn show. This guy just genuinely loves to take things that aren't his. By now, though, I'm sure you have already guessed Two-Face's biggest mark against him as a boss is his indecision. He is obsessed with his coin, and many times is paralyzed with choice. There's a good chance that you could get a nice meaty score, could have gotten something really awesome done, only for him to change his mind at the last minute because the coin told him to. And yes, that's up to and including possibly shooting you as a henchman should the mood strike him, which, doesn't really make for a great work environment, yeah? Now, on the other side of the Gotham Underworld coin, we of course have Oswald Chesterfield Cobblepot, better known as the Penguin. Unlike Two-Face on the surface, the Penguin looks like a much more traditional mobster figure, though unlike Gotham's own mafia families, the Maronis, the Falcones, you don't actually need to be Italian to join this guy's operation. In fact, I dare say in most cases, the Penguin's gang might actually be the most diverse and welcoming of any gang in Gotham, no doubt stemming from the fact that Oswald himself isn't exactly the prototypical crime boss, what with being short, stout, and sometimes even freakish or monstrous in appearance depending on who's drawing him. Perhaps the best example of what I'm talking about right here comes in the truly excellent Jonathan Ridley One Bad Day story, wherein we see Oswald's hiring policy firsthand. He hires the little person powerhouse Lee Crusher Kwan as his own personal muscle, as well as the young but feisty and kind of dumb Elliot, as well as a firm of female guns for hire who often clash against the more misogynistic hiring policy of hired guns in Gotham City. Hell, on the subject of women in the Penguin gang, there has actually proved to be quite a lot of upward momentum for women. Jay, Lark, and Raven come to mind. Sometimes they served as muscle for Penguin out on the street, sometimes they served as completely legitimate waitresses at the Iceberg Lounge. The Iceberg Lounge is, of course, maybe one of the most important cogs in the Penguin gang machine. Not only does it serve as Oswald's own personal seat of power, but it offers probably good no-show jobs to the most loyal members of his gang, a completely legitimate business to wash his dirty money, something that a lot of the other gangs in Gotham can't personally say they have going for them. The reason the Iceberg Lounge is such an important diamond in Penguin's crown is that it serves as a beautiful little intersection between the high society that he has always viewed himself as a part of, that he has always wanted to be closer to, and a chance for him to, gamble and schmooze and womanize. Now, dress code within Penguin's gang is kind of a hard nut to crack, and it kind of depends on where he sends you. If you're working for him on the street, it seems to be a pretty relaxed kind of thing. Wear whatever you like, whatever helps for the job. Or if you're stationed at the club, obviously things are going to be a lot more fancier, a lot more black tie and white glove. Then, of course, we have the world of the video games where things only get stranger. In Arkham City, the Penguin's goons donned Arctic camo and balaclavas that looked like actual penguins. Then you have Arkham City where it gets even stranger. They ditch the uniforms they had before and instead choose to adopt a biker aesthetic complete with back patches and everything. I think somewhere it was stated that these new goons were actually patched over members from the famous Street Demons biker gang from Gotham lore, but I don't think I can prove that one way or another. Either way, very strange choices for Penguin's gang in terms of dress. But what kind of boss is Penguin, and what would working under him be like? Well, in most stories, it seems to be that he is one of the cooler heads amongst the Gotham gang lords. For starters, he's not actually crazy. When he gets caught by Batman, he goes to regular old Blackgate prison and not Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane. So, there's definitely stuff there you can work with. Now, just because he's not crazy is not to say that the Penguin isn't filled with a ton of personality flaws. He has an explosive temper, especially when he thinks someone is trying to get one over on him, and he has shown time and time again that he is not above taking out this anger on his henchmen. Hell, big spoiler for the Penguin TV show, but he has also been shown to be incredibly petty, incredibly greedy, so much to the point that he is actually willing to kill some of the closest people to him just because he's afraid that that sort of love could potentially be used against him down the line. Penguin also has a real problem with loyalty too. Again, in that wonderful One Bad Day storyline from Jonathan Ridley I mentioned, all of that kicked off when the Umbrella Man, aka the guy whose job it was to actually hold Penguin's umbrella for him, turned against him. Oswald had to spend the rest of the book trying to mend fences and get henchmen back who he had ended up breaking things off with rather unceremoniously before, meaning that if he did it to them, there's probably a good chance he would do it to you. It's probably safe to assume that the best way that you could actually make it in the Penguin's organization is just show up every day, be nice and professional, and try your hardest to not actually get roped into this guy's personal life. It might actually save your head in the long run. No discussion of Gotham gang lords would be complete without the clown prince of crime himself, the Joker. On top of being Batman's #1 arch nemesis, Mr. J also heads a pretty sizable organization himself. In fact, I dare say at times, it seems like the Joker actively has more henchmen than just about anyone else. Lord knows he goes through them quicker than anyone else. Which I think in and of itself actually speaks to the Joker's animal magnetism, his pull. He's generally psychotic most of the time, as likely to kill you as to look at you, and yet time and time again, he seemingly has no problem in the recruitment department. He just is that big an underworld celebrity. They don't get bigger than the Joker. His reputation precedes him, and yet time and time again, would-be henchmen are willing to join his gang, willing to throw all sense to the wind. That is, of course, assuming that they had any sense to begin with. To work for the Joker, you don't need to be crazy, but it certainly helps if you have a couple screws loose. The Joker doesn't run his gang like the other bosses either. Most of the time, he seems uninterested. Maybe the best example we have of what kind of gang boss Joker is comes in the Brian Azzarello story called Joker. If you'll recall, in that story, Mr. J gets out of jail, goes to a bar, and basically demands money from a guy who works for him. Stories like this ended up leading to my own personal headcanon that whenever the Joker needs a cash infusion or needs warm bodies for the next job, he just shows up and demands it. Speaking of warm bodies, it sure doesn't seem like Joker turns many people away from joining his gang, be it the one-armed hulking Mr. Hammer from the Arkham games, the diminutive psycho circus performer Gaggy. The Joker really is an equal opportunity employer. Hell, a lot of the times he hires people even if they're not human, lest we remember the story of Jackanape, who is a ape and a supervillain and a friend of the Joker. Then you have Bud and Lou, who, are they technically part of the gang, or are they just Harley's pets? I mean, Crypto and Ace I would consider to be part of the Superman families and the Batman family, so sure, you know what, the hyenas count too. The Joker's gang might also seem like a weird place for women, but believe it or not, we have actually seen a lot of women excel working in his gang. Of course, the most famous story is Harley Quinn, the Joker psychiatrist turned gun moll turned right-hand woman, etc., etc. Then you have Punchline a few years later, who more or less helped him out on one caper before eventually being promoted to getting her own solo series and working with her own gang in the Royal Flush. It really doesn't seem to matter if you're man, woman, or beast. If you can actually survive in the Joker's orbit for even a short amount of time, you will see your underworld rep grow by leaps and bounds. That is, of course, assuming you actually do survive. Let us not forget the very sad story of Johnny Frost, the Joker's driver from that Brian Azzarello story, Joker, that I mentioned. This poor dude basically had his whole life destroyed in record time just by being around the Joker for a little too long. Uniforms are nice and simple in the Joker's gang. Different flavors of clowns, sometimes just basic Halloween mask, sometimes full-on homemade outfits. In the animated series too, we also had henchmen based on famous comedy classics like Moe, Lair, and Kerr, who are very obviously supposed to be the Three Stooges. These might be hard outfits to maintain, assuming you're not already some manner of juggalo, but it's also, broad enough that I think anyone could acclimate themselves to dressing for the job they want in the Joker's gang. Of course, the biggest hurdle to thriving in the Joker's gang is naturally the Joker himself. This guy is incredibly volatile, clown shit insane, and that's just when he's in a murdering mood. Sometimes he might just be in a cruel mood and make fun of you, which, hey, that's not gonna make for a healthy work environment, is it? You want to try and move up in the world. And how are you gonna do that if you keep sitting on exploding whoopee cushions or being asked to smell flowers that actually shoot acid, I ask you? But hey, if you tough it out, this might actually end up being quite the opportunity for you. As Harley Quinn and Punchline have shown, just managing to make it out of the Joker's gang alive is cause for celebration. And hey, speaking of Harley Quinn, you notice whenever people talk about the which Gotham gang would you want to join question, they never seem to offer up a Harley as an option, despite the fact that she has been shown to be an actually very successful gang leader across several different forms of media. There's the version of her in the Arkham games where she takes control of Joker's gang following his death, changing their uniforms, changing their tactics, and actually proving quite a challenge to Batman and Robin. Then you have her actual gang of Harleys from the Jimmy Palmiotti comics, a group that she kept small, kept mobile, and who were overall pretty damn successful. Yeah, this was during more of her anti-villain phase, and the group was more a group of vigilantes than they were a gang of actual criminals. But hey, you know what? Success is success, and being a vigilante, even though we as comic fans often forget it, is still technically a crime. Hell, the best example of Harley Quinn as a gang leader is probably in the Harley Quinn animated show, where she ends up going a step further by bringing in actual metahuman muscle like King Shark and Clayface. The gang was wildly successful too, overcoming incredible odds, and the only dark mark against them is the fact that they were kind of betrayed from within by Dr. Psycho. Were it not for him, I would say the group was batting 100 and probably the best, safest, most successful choice to actually join if you had to join a Gotham gang. But, we can't all join gangs. For the rest of us, at least there's always YouTube.